No, I know. Yeah. And then you've met, I think. No. Okay. We have to fly you to New York. When's your next time coming? Because we will probably be back in Paris. So, we'll fly to UNESCO. He needs a restaurant recommendation in Paris. He was directed. It's good to have friends. So if you can gather there, we will do this small and nice ceremony, have donuts, and then continue with our program. Come in. Yeah.
No, because that's hard to come in first.
Guys, gather around. Hanukkah is the holiday of light, which on each day we are lighting another candle. So today we are on the 6th candle, as I can see. We still have 2 days to go. Usually it's a very happy holiday where we eat only junk and we celebrate an old tradition of victory of the Maccabees, the Jews at that time, over the Greek hegemony which was in our region at that time. But today we are good friends with the Greeks and they are still even here with us, yet the occasion is still here. And afterwards we have sufganiyot, which are the traditional donuts that we eat on that day. And then we will start with the program, which takes around an hour. So Rabbi David Michaels. The seventh, yes, I thought so, but when I saw 6, I didn't understand.
Tout va bien?
Yes.
Comment? Ouais, je te laisse.
בזמן הזה הנרות הללו אנו מדליקים על הניסים ועל החוקן ועל התשובות ועל הנפלאות ועל החמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה על ידי כהניך הקדושים כל שמונת ימי חנוכה הנרות הללו קודש הם ואין לנו רשות להשתמש בהם אלא לאותם בלבד כדי להודות לשמך נצחך ונפלאותיך מזמור של חנוכת הבית לדוד ארומך אדוני כי גיליתני ולשמחת ובאתי אדוני אלוהי אשר תכבדך מלאני עלי חייתה משום אשר חייתני מדבור זמרו לנחסה ודולזתת פשוט כדי גבור חיימת ובער מקבל הבוקר הנה ואני אמרתי בשש בלמות העולם אדוני יסוף להימרת לאבי ותפתחת ולך הייתי ואלוהיך לך ובעצם בדמי בריתי שחרך ולגיל את משהו נכונני אדוני היה עוזר לי הפת המסתרים ואחול לי פיתת וספיות תעזרי לשמחה למעט זמך כבוד אלוהי דומנה אלוהי לעולם עודך וסימן טוב מעוזו ישועתי לך נאה שבח תיכון בתפילתי ושם תודה נשבח לתחים על מאה משער נבח אז זה כמו בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח אז זה כמו בשיר מזמור חנוכת המזבח.
Please, can have some donuts.
התקשורת, מידיה, הפרטים זה הכל? אוקיי, תודה.
תודה רבה, חזק ואמץ. אבל זה לא השירות של הבית, זה לא מאוד שקלסת. תודה רבה. לא, אני אומר, זה שחשבו על הצבעות שאין. כן, אבל הבדיחה הזאת ממש
I think it would be the week of March 10th.
Ça va? C'est bien avec les bien, toujours faire des choses, ils montent quand même très haut. Nous, on est
David Michaels.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to get started. If you could please take your seats, we would be appreciated. Thank you.
Il y a un problème, c'est quand on va déclarer tes visages. Ah oui, cette vidéo.
Ouais, je vais l'enlever.
Guys, thank you all for coming. Please take seats. We'll start in a second. Hello to you all. My name is Haim. I'm the Israeli ambassador to international organizations. I'm honored to have here tonight with us families of kidnappees from the Arab minorities in Israel. In this evening, we try to bring a different angle because eventually Israel is a diverse society and the Arab minorities are a big and important part of it. And of course, they have suffered from these terror attacks as much as anyone else. And they have kidnappees. Some of them has been released in the previous rounds. Most of them has not yet been released. Among them, Samer Fouad El Talakaka, Yusuf El Zaidana, Hamaza El Zaidana, Hamza Mutassef, Farhan El Kadi, and I'm sorry, סליחה, השם לא היה פה נכון, פרחן אל-קאדי, and one other kidnappee who was kidnapped. I was kidnapped much before, Hisham El Sayed. So we are gathered here to hear their story and their testimony and their plea to us. After almost 9.5 weeks of war against the Hamas terrorist organization in Gaza, we are determined with our two goals: A, to eradicate Hamas as a terrorist organization, and B, to release all 137 kidnappees who are still there in horrible conditions that one cannot even imagine. We have a very charged program, not very long, but very charged. We'll hear the testimony, and then we'll have we'll see a short film of 2 minutes of the horrific terror attack. This is a very graphic movie, so we'll give it also in French. If you feel uncomfortable, please don't watch this 2-minute movie. And then we'll hear the families and the organizations who help with the survivors and who has been on the ground as first aid to come at the midst of this horrific day on October 7th. And at the end, we will hear some words from Bernard-Henri Lévy, who should come in a few minutes. So without further ado, maybe you can start with the film.
Introduction.
Sorry. David.
Permission. Thank you. Excellence, Ambassador Haim Assaraf, leaders of the French Jewish community, including Dr. Joël Murgui, President of the Consistoire de Paris, and Rabban David Michaels, Rabbi of the Edmond J. Safra Synagogue at the Center, leaders of B'nai B'rith Europe and B'nai B'rith France, President Serge Daon and President Philippe Meir, Bernard-Henri Lévy, who will be arriving shortly, as the ambassador said, family members, survivors, and first responders from Israel, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Michaels. I serve as Director of United Nations and Intercommunal Affairs at B'nai B'rith International, a 180-year-old Jewish communal and humanitarian organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., with a presence across 6 continents. Allow me to join in expressing thanks to this center and to all those who made this event possible, including the Permanent Mission of Israel to the Multilateral Organizations, and especially all of our guests from Israel. And I thank all those who are watching or will watch this event online globally, as well as all of you who have taken the time to come in person despite the holiday period and the very limited notice. This week, as we've just seen, is the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, the festival of lights. The menorah, the candelabrum of which from the Holy Temple in Jerusalem is commemorated both on the Arch of Titus in Rome, following the conquest of ancient Israel by the Romans, but also on the national emblem of the State of Israel, which represents the restoration of Jewish national life after 2 millennia of dispersion and often persecution. But for so many, as the ambassador said, especially the roughly half of the Jewish people calling Israel home, this is an exceptionally dark Hanukkah. 2 months before we just marked the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, itself enshrined in the aftermath of World War II, Hamas, the Iranian-supported Palestinian group that has controlled the Gaza Strip since 2007, perpetrated the greatest atrocities against Jewish civilians since the Holocaust, not only indiscriminately firing more than 10,500 new rockets into Israel, but torturing, raping, parading, beheading, and in some cases burning entire families. But Hamas and its sponsors, who are officially and openly committed to Israel's total destruction, did not suffice with murdering Jews. They also, as we will shortly hear, did not spare Arab Muslim citizens of Israel and citizens of some 40 countries, as well as their own civilian population, hiding and firing from across and underneath practically the entirety of the Gaza Strip. Israel had completely and unilaterally withdrawn from Gaza, including every single soldier and civilian settlement back in 2005, just as it had in 2000 from a former security zone along Lebanon's southern border, which Iranian-backed Hezbollah terrorists now exploit to pose an even graver threat to Israelis and Lebanese alike. Thus, in both the south and the north of Israel, a country of less than 10 million people, the Middle East's only functioning pluralistic democracy, with barely 3% of the landmass of France, hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Every day, more and more conscripted service members are unfortunately killed or maimed, and millions more are unimaginably traumatized. You here in France, you here in Paris, are all too familiar with violent extremism. The horrific Bataclan attacks here in Paris took 130 innocent lives. The Charlie Hebdo terror attack took 12 lives. The Nice Bastide atrocity took 86. In Israel, on October 7th, 1,200 lives were stolen, in addition to at least 240 infants, children, and the elderly, women and men alike, abducted to Gaza. The majority of those, 67 days later, remain in captivity. In other words, for families like the Ziyadas, a Bedouin family from whom we will hear shortly, October 7th did not end on October 7th. If only for the sake of its own people, Hamas could end the hostilities today by ending its violence and releasing all of its hostages, but it chooses not to. Indeed, its senior official said in a television interview that it plans to perpetrate October 7th over and over and over again. Today's program does not come in any way to overlook or dismiss the pain and the hardship of all too many ordinary citizens in Gaza. To the contrary, our conviction is that finally ensuring basic safety for the people of Israel, all the people of Israel, and addressing the plight of those we will hear from today would go hand in hand with delivering normalcy and a more promising future also for Palestinians. The challenges clearly are great, but over the past 75 years, Israel has eagerly established peace and cooperation with every single willing Arab and Muslim interlocutor. If those motivated by ideological fanaticism can finally be contained, it is our hope and our prayer that no holiday again be overshadowed by the profound grief and the profound fear that so many continue to endure now. And with that, as the ambassador said, we will now present a 2-minute video documenting some of the actions of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other terrorists on October 7th. Although it is only a very short sample of the terrible footage from that day, much of it recorded and broadcast by the perpetrators themselves, we know that this footage is very disturbing. Those who may be especially sensitive to its content, including the family members from Israel, are invited to briefly step outside the hall or to avoid watching the footage. It's our obligation to share that no recording whatsoever of this portion of our program is permitted, and we will briefly pause the viewing for those tuning in online. Our colleague Stéphane Ticher will now make this same announcement in French. Stéphane.
Oui, simplement pour ceux qui n'ont pas tout saisi, pour vous préciser que le film très court que nous allons vous présenter ne dure que 2 minutes, mais contient tout de même des images très violentes. Donc les personnes sensibles qui le souhaitent sont invités à quitter la salle pendant cette projection. Voilà.
Thank you, Stéphane.
I'm sure that even without the sound, the pictures are horrific as by themselves. We are sorry for this technical element.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And like the ambassador, we really are immensely sorry to have to share that material, but material that I think is important nonetheless to understanding the scale of the events of October 7th and the challenges that we collectively face. We now turn to members of the Ziadna family, members, as I said, of the Bedouin communities of southern Israel. On November 30th, they celebrated the freeing of two of their family members, Aisha, 16 years old, and Bilal, 18 years old, from captivity in Gaza. But two other members of the same family, Hamza, 22, and Yusuf, 53, are still being held hostage there. Among those with us today are Kamel al-Zaidna, nephew of Yusuf and cousin of Hamza, abducted from Kibbutz Cholit, and Noaf el-Ziadna, brother of Yusuf and uncle of Hamza. We also have with us Fuad Talalka, father of Samar Talalka, who is aged in his 20s and was also abducted from another kibbutz. And Shaban el-Sayed, father of Hisham el-Sayed in his 30s, who was abducted in 2015, also by Hamas, is with us as well. We cannot imagine the ordeal that these private citizens have experienced, and we lack sufficient words to express our genuine sympathy, solidarity, and concern. We thank all of you, members of the Ziadna family, and your friends also joining you from Israel, for embarking on this emotionally and also physically taxing journey, and we thank you for bravely sharing the story of your family members with us. Kamel, Ziadna, we now invite you to
Nawaf Ziadna, Sharafit. Okay, please come.
السلام عليكم مساء الخير عرف طוב לכולם חג שמח عيد مبروك.
Good evening everybody and חג שמח.
أنا نواف الزيادنة أخو يوسف الزيادنة.
My name is Nawaf Ziadni, the brother of Yusuf al-Ziadni.
حمزة ابن يوسف وبلال وعائشة أنا عمهم.
The uncle of Hamza, Bilal and Aisha, who were kidnapped with their father.
يوم 17 اليوم الأسود راحوا للشغل في كيبوتز خوليت.
On 7th of October, the dark day, they went to work at Cholit kibbutz.
اشتغلوا في الريفة في مزرعة.
They worked with the animals there.
17 سنة يوسف بيشتغل في كيبوتز خوليت.
Yusuf worked at the kibbutz for 17 years.
يوسف على 7:15 خلص الاتصال معه. اجوا جماعة من حماس واخذوه هو وولاده اثنين حمزة وبلال وبنت عائشة.
On Saturday, the last time they heard from Yusuf and his family was at 7:15, and since then they know that they were kidnapped to Gaza by Hamas, and they didn't hear anything about them since then.
وقربوا بهم على غزة من نفس اليوم 17 اليوم الأسود ما بنعرف عنهم. في نفس اليوم ورونا صورة لبلال وصورة لحمزة، والمجتمع حكى إن بلال وحمزة معهم ويوسف والبنت عايشة اللي هي بنته مش موجودين.
They knew about the family have been abducted by pictures of them on social media and maybe a short video that said that they are abducted to Gaza. That's how they know about this.
ظلت العائلة كلها العشيرة حوالي 20,000 نفر، عشيرة الزيادة، كلهم في حزن وكلهم في غلب وفي مكت وفي زعل وما بيعرفوا ايش فيه ولا جاهم اي معلومة.
Since then, the entire El Zayadne tribe that has almost 20,000 people belong to this huge tribe. Since then, the tribe in a very bad situation. Everybody is sad. Everybody is just talking and thinking about the abducted members.
وأصحابنا ما قصروا من جميع الجهات.
All our friends from
بيمشوا بيجوا علينا وبيسألونا إيش فيه ما معهم معلومات.
All our friends from the different parts of the Israeli society, they are with us. They tell us that they stand with us, but none of them come with the new information about the family.
لما صار لهم حوالي 53 يوم بدأوا يحكوا ودهم يضربوا عايشة بنت صغيرة 16 سنة مع الصفقات اللي بيطلعن، وأولوا أخروها مع أخوها. لما صار 55 يوم أطلقوا سراح عايشة وبلال. على 55 يوم علينا.
After almost 50 days, the first time someone spoke with them about maybe releasing the teenagers. Aisha is 16 and Hamza is 17. It was after 50 days, and they were released eventually in the 7th release part. So it was after 55 days.
سألنا بلال قال أنا جيت من عند أبوي وما بعرف ولا حاجة، ما بدري ولا حاجة، جيت من عند أبوي أنا وأختي، وأبوي تعبان، أبوه مريض، عنده مرض سكر، عنده ضغط، عنده جلطة في الرأس قبل كم شهر كانت عندي مشكلة في واحدة من العيون سووا لها عملية، وأخوه بلال في عنده مشكلة في الرأس مرجرينا هي اللي بتصيب الرأس بتخلي الرأس يصير يلف. وعنده
Bilal told them that he was with his father before being released, but the father Yusuf is very sick. He has diabetes. The brother Hamza he has severe migraines, and both of them are in a very bad situation back there without their medicine, without anything. So they have no idea what's their situation right now.
ويوسف عنده 19 ولد في البيت وهو اللي معيشهم وهو عيان وبيشتغل، ولو إنه ما عنده الأولاد أظل ما أشتغل وهو عيان. وحمزة عنده أولاد 2 وأنا بطلب وبترجع.
Yusuf, as we said at the beginning, he's 53. He has 19 kids, and he's the only provider for his family. His son, Hamza, he's 22. He was married 3 years ago. He has 2 kids. And actually, now the family lost their providers.
ويوسف راح على كيبوتس خوليت على جنب غزة بيشتغل عامل، له جيش ولا هو مساعد جيش ولا هو بيساعد أحد، بيساعد نفسه، بيشتغل في المستوطنة تبعت الكيبوتس مشان يعيش أولاده.
And Yusuf is a civilian. He was not involved in anything, no military, no security, nothing. He's just a simple man who went to work on Saturday, Friday night, and that's it. He was supposed to, I'm adding here something that he didn't say, he was supposed to finish his shift at 8 o'clock in the morning, and all this happened at 7 o'clock.
أنا بطلب من كل الجهات اليهودية والعربية والفرنسوية واليهود اللي في فرنسا واليهود اللي في إسرائيل والعرب وقطر والمسؤولين اللي في حماس من الكل، من المصريين من الأردنيين، كل من بيقدر يساعد لو 1% يساعد في يوسف وولده حمزة يطلق سراحهم، لأنهم عيانين وتعبانين وبيقدروا يتأثروا وهم موجودين في المنطقة اللي هم فيها.
We are asking everyone, we are asking the state of Israel, we are asking the Jewish communities, we are asking the Jewish community here in France and the French authorities and Qatar and the Arabs here in France and the Arab community all around the world to pressure Hamas, to ask Hamas to release them because they are sick and we need them back home, their family needs them back home.
حكيت كثير وده أحكي كمان كلمة. النداء لكل من بيقدر يساعد يطلق سراح أخوي يوسف وولد أخوي حمزة لأنهم تعبانين وما لهم أي ذنب، واليهود بيقولوا كلمة خاصمة بشع بس عمال بيشتغلوا مشان يطعموا أولادهم خبز.
He said that he spoke a lot, but he wants to say the last thing is he's calling and he's calling and he's calling everybody, even those who have a slight opportunity to help the family and to help the community to release the children, to release their family members, to release his brother Yusuf, because otherwise it's a risk for their lives. بدك تقول بعد شيء أوسع من هيك؟
يعني حكيت كثير. أشكر المجموعة كلها ونتمنى لهم إن شاء الله بروحوا بالسلامة سالمين، وكل من يساهم ويساعد أنا بأشكره جدا والعائلة كلها بتشكره، ويعني ساعدونا إن الوضع صعب جدا، احنا في حالة صعبة. خلونا ننصر وننبسط في ترويحة يوسف لا يتأثر يوسف وابن حمزة بس.
He wants to thank you all and he hopes that everybody will be released and of course the family member will come so the family will return to normality and the situation will go back to normality. Thank you very much.
שלום לכם. כידוע אנחנו סובלים מהעניין של החטיפה, הבן שלי זה שם.
As you know, we are part of the families of the kidnappees. His son's name is Haim.
הסיפור שלנו מאז 2015, הסיפור שלנו דומה מאוד למשפחה של אברה מנגיסטו.
The story of his family is like other family of another Israeli who was kidnapped already in 2015, and ever since there is no news. He's been captured by the Hamas.
אנחנו היינו אצל הרבה מקומות והרבה קהילות יהודיות כל הזמן ניסו לעזור לנו בכל מיני מדינות באירופה.
We have been visiting several communities and several countries in Europe and beyond, trying to find assistance.
אנחנו מבקשים מכולם לעזור בעניין החטופים בכלל וללחוץ פה על מקבלי ההחלטות באירופה שהם כן יכולים ללחוץ איפה שצריך ללחוץ. אני יכול לתת שם.
We plead here to all those who can assist within Europe and beyond Europe, who has the ability to pressure the Hamas to please do so. We've been doing it for some time now.
כידוע, אני שעבן אל-סייד, אני מייצג רק את עצמי, אני מדבר רק בשם של עצמי ולא מייצג אף אחד.
As you know, his name is Shaban Sayed. He's the relative of Hisham al-Sayed, 35 years old. We arrived to Gaza in 2010, and then in 2015 he was kept again, and then in 2022 Hamas released a video of him while he's in the hospital. And since October 7th, this family joined the headquarters of the kidnappees that was created in Israel to help return Hisham as well with the other 137 kidnappees.
אני מאוד מודה לכם שאתם מתעניינתם בסיפור שלנו, ואנחנו מקווים שהחג האורות יאיר לחטופים את הדרך הביתה.
I thank you so much for your interest, and I hope that Hanukkah, the light of candle, the holiday of candle and lights, will also lead the way of the return of the kidnappees. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to both testimonies that we've just received from Israel, and to all of those who joined you, Sheikh Al-Zaidna, for all of your efforts and all of your testimony. Ziyadna. We hope that my Arabic pronunciation needs work, but we'll work on it. We hope that you and all the families of the abducted will be reunited with your loved ones swiftly and only in health. We know that your family has a full schedule of engagements here in Paris, but we thank you for including us in your visit. We will now hear from two first responders in Israel who experienced harrowing sights, dangers, and unparalleled professional challenges on October 7th. Avi Yudkovsky of United Hatzalah will speak in English and is accompanied by his colleague Tzvi Roth, followed by Mendy Chaviv of Zaka, who will speak in French. The work that these professionals and their organizations do every day is difficult, is sacred, and life-saving without regard for the circumstances or the identity of the people in need. But on October 7th, it was beyond extraordinary and heroic. Thank you all for being here. Avi, we will start with you, if you will.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Like he said, my name is Avi Yudkovsky. I live in Givat Zev. It's right near Jerusalem. My daily basis, I try to make people happy. I'm a DJ. I go to weddings, to birthday parties. Usually the days a week I don't work. I go on shifts on United Hatzalah together with friends and ambulances. The 7th of October was a day I'm never going to forget, me and my friends. What we went through that day, even if I sit here a few days, I'm not going to be able to explain you. And the morning started around 7 o'clock after we were dancing the whole night with the Sefer Torah. My brother is in the IDF. He woke me up about 7 o'clock in the morning, and he told me that there's a war going on south. His commander just called him and told him to be ready. I volunteer also in the dispatch of United Hatzalah, so I right away woke up, I called the dispatch center, and I asked them if they need any help over there. He told me, yes, but go south because they need you over there more. I right away got dressed and left. I called a friend that was with the ambulance that lives near me. He picked me up and we left together south. There's a section called Tzomet Cheletz. It's by the entrance a little bit before Sderot. The dispatch told all the ambulances to stand there and not go further in because they don't know what's going on. When we got there, we just went in because we came to see what's going on and see how we can help. When we got in, the stuff we saw, we can't explain. Doesn't matter what I'm going to tell you. I was thinking on the way here what story I could say. The stories that day, they're hundreds, they're thousands that we went in a few hours. What we did basically that day, we were in an ambulance. We went into Kfar Aza, Be'eri, Re'im, all the places where all the terrorists were. We took out soldiers. I really don't think there's a unit that wasn't in our ambulance that day. We took tons of soldiers and people from the party and families and kids. We took them back to Tzomet Cheletz, and from there, different ambulances or helicopters took them to the hospitals. I was thinking what stories I can say. One of the stuff that I'm never going to forget, one of the times we came to Kfar Aza, we took 3 soldiers that were injured. One of them was from Yamam. He was 40 years old. He got a hit from an RPG by his leg. There was 2 20-year-old soldiers, one from Golani, one from Duvdevan. They were both shot. One was shot in his face, and one was shot 2 bullets, one in his foot and one in his hand. We took the 3 of them, and when we got to Tzomet Cheletz, there was no available ambulances, so we decided we're going to take them to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, the guy from Yamam was laying down on the stretcher, and there was no room for all of them to lay down. So two of the other ones were sitting, and the guy from Duvdevan was really bleeding a lot, and he was becoming very pale, and we needed to give him IV. And we were trying to find a comfortable way to do it because we were standing and there wasn't a lot of room. And all of a sudden, the guy without the foot that was just laying on the stretcher just opened his seatbelt, got up, picked up his friend, put him on the stretcher, and sat down and told us, now it's going to be easier for you. Someone without a leg who can do that, that's a small story that we went through that day that shows you what really Am Yisrael is, that someone that's badly injured is going to do anything to help his friend. Another story, we just needed to decide that day who's going to come with us, who's going to stay alive, and who we're going to need to keep in the field and come back together. We took in our ambulance 6, 7, 8 people together who were badly injured, just back and forth. We go in, take, and go right back out. We were getting Shuda. We didn't have time to look right and left. We were just driving between bodies, and that day was one of the times we came with someone that was really badly injured. We brought him to a helicopter, army helicopter that was waiting for us. And when we got there, another ambulance came with another soldier. That soldier was very, very badly injured. And there was one doctor from United Hatzalah who checked whoever we brought and the other guy, and he came to me and he said, put the one from your ambulance in the helicopter, because there was room for only one. And I said, why? The guy in the other ambulance he needs the helicopter more. So he told me a small line that I'm never going to forget. He said, whoever's in your ambulance has a little more chances to survive. So that was that day, that's what we went through. We came to places where there was 10 soldiers injured, and we just needed to pick 3 or 4 and take those, and bring them because there was no room. There was no ambulances there. There was not enough equipment. We had United Salah brought there. At 11, 12 o'clock in the morning, there was already a truck that came with full equipment. Every time we went in, we just brought boxes of equipment and gave it to the soldiers who were going more inside. I think however much I'm going to speak and tell you and try to explain what we went through it's not even a small part of what we really went over there. We can't explain, but we're the Jews, that's what we do. I know 2 weeks later I was DJing by a wedding and I was supposed to make people jump and happy. I'm just davening that this Chag should really bring the Or back to Am Yisrael, and we should all dance by Bet HaMikdash soon. And we should all feel good, and it should be the last time we need to have stuff like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mendy, for those remarks. And thank you again to your colleague Tzvi Roth for joining you here today. You will now hear in French from Mendy Chaviv. Mr. Chaviv, thank you very much for joining us. S'il vous plaît.
Bonsoir, je m'appelle Mendy Habib, je suis père de 8 enfants, j'habite Kfar Chabad. Je vais vous raconter un petit peu ce qui s'est passé chez nous à Zaka et c'est quoi Zaka. Alors d'abord, Zaka c'est un organisme qu'on est tous des volontaires. On est tous des volontaires et tout ce qu'on fait, c'est pour donner l'honneur aux gens qui sont plus en vie, qui sont déjà décédés et qui sont morts. Et on est là pour les occuper. Et on est tous des volontaires. On n'est pas attachés avec l'État ou quelque chose comme ça. Ça veut dire c'est tout du volontaire. Et ici, ce qui se passe, ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on ramasse tout ce qu'il y a de la personne après qu'elle est morte. Ça veut dire quand c'est des attentats, quand c'est des accidents. Ce qui se passe ici en France, c'est les pompiers qui font, mais en Israël, c'est pas les pompiers, c'est nous qu'on le fait, et on le fait avec beaucoup de respect. Et c'est quelque chose de spécial parce que c'est aussi écrit dans le judaïsme chez nous. Le judaïsme juif, c'est très important le corps, et c'est très important la vie. Alors, la plupart des volontaires, c'est des chovshim. Chovshim, c'est des gens qui donnent la première aide. Ça veut dire des paramédics, d'accord? Des chovshim paramédics. Et si on n'arrive pas à sauver, alors après, on s'occupe de la mort. Ce qui s'est passé maintenant, le 7 octobre, c'était la grande fête Simchat Torah. C'est une très grande fête qu'on finit la Bible et on la recommence. Et voilà, il commençait à avoir les sirènes, les fusils qui commençaient à sortir vers nous. Moi, j'habite dans le centre, je suis chef commandant de Zaka, centre. Alors tout de suite, je prépare mes collègues et je leur dis, il faut se préparer, il y a quelque chose qui est pas normal, qui se passe quelque chose de pas normal. Moi, je suis sorti là-bas dimanche matin, après que j'ai sorti tout le matériel qu'on avait, mais vraiment tout le matériel. Moi, je suis déjà 25 ans à peu près dans Zaka, et j'ai compris pendant tout ce samedi que tout le matériel qu'on a apporté déjà, que mes collègues ils ont apporté déjà sur place, là-bas sur le terrain, ça n'a pas suffi. Il fallait rapporter encore. Alors vraiment, on a vidé les caves, c'est pas des caves, c'est des endroits, les containers où on avait le matériel, on les a vidés, on a tout pris. Et je suis monté, moi, à mon ambulance, mes équipes à moi, on est tous montés parce que les équipes qui travaillaient là-bas sur place, que c'est leur région à eux, Zaka, qui sont sur place, ils ont travaillé pendant tout le samedi, tout le Shabbat, et en plus, ils ont commencé jusque l'endroit, ils n'ont pas dormi pendant 24 heures. Ils étaient sur place sans dormir et en plein travail, et c'est pas un travail qui est facile. Moi, quand je suis arrivé, là-bas sur place, c'était un cauchemar parce que c'est pas quelque chose que je vois. Moi, je vois beaucoup de morts. Si c'est comme je vous ai dit, des accidents, des suicides, tout ce qui est mort au dehors des hôpitaux, c'est nous qu'on s'en occupe. Mais là, quand vous voyez, quand j'arrive et je vois une voiture avec une poussette de bébé ou avec des petites poupées, j'ai pris des photos qui sont vraiment horribles. Quand tu vois une petite poupée d'un enfant plein de sang et à côté tu vois des uniformes des assassins, c'est pas quelque chose qui est normal. D'abord, c'est pas normal, mais quand on a commencé à avancer et on commence à voir des voitures qui sont dans les champs, qui sont déjà sorties de la route avec des balles, avec des gens qui étaient encore dans les voitures. Et ça, je vous parle le lendemain, dimanche. En plus de ça, on est sous feu d'un coup. Il commence à des terroristes qui étaient encore sur place, qui se sont cachés. Depuis, ils commencent à tirer sur nous. Et on se jette par terre, on se cache. L'armée qui est là pour nous protéger, elle commence des combats. Nous, tout de suite, on nous a fait rentrer dans le premier yeshuv qui s'appelle Mefalsim. On se cache, on prend l'abri là-bas. Les soldats, ils se battent et quand ils finissent le combat, ils reviennent avec un des très grands colonels de l'armée qui est mort là-bas dans ce combat. Et ça veut dire on travaille, on fait ce truc-là pour donner de l'honneur aux gens qui sont décédés et on est sous feu, mais on sait que c'est le travail, on sait que c'est une mission que Dieu nous a envoyée. Ça veut dire on le fait pas comme ça parce qu'on sait que nous, le peuple juif, c'est très très important, le corps aussi de la personne, même quand elle est décédée, il est tellement important et c'est pour ça qu'on le fait même si c'est sous feu. Et même s'il y a... toute notre vie, c'est pour la vie, ça veut dire, c'est pour que la vie, elle soit en paix, que les pays soient en paix, que tout le monde soit en paix entre nous. Et de l'autre côté, ce que je vois de l'autre côté, des trucs qui sont horribles, qui sont atroces, ça veut dire, si c'est des femmes qui ont été, je veux pas... je sais pas comment, je suis très religieux et tout ce que je fais, c'est pour donner de l'honneur à ces personnes. Alors, je peux pas vous expliquer ce qu'ils ont fait aux femmes, aux jeunes femmes, pas sur la route. J'ai ramassé des femmes qui étaient dans le champ entre Israël et Gaza. Vraiment, ils ont pris 700 mètres. Une femme qui était 700 mètres déjà dans le champ, ou dans des coins où il y avait des arbres et des coins. Quand je vois des poussettes, des enfants, comme je vous ai dit, c'est vraiment horrible. Et ça, tout ça, c'est avant qu'on est rentré dans les kibbutz, dans les villages même. Quand on est rentré dans les villages, c'est des trucs aussi horribles. Et c'est des choses que c'est pas ce qu'on n'a pas vu là-bas, ce qu'on a vu sur la route. Ça veut dire des gens qui étaient fusillés et tout. On a plus vu des familles, mais c'est des familles entières. Ça veut dire c'est des vieilles femmes âgées, des mamies, des enfants, des petits enfants. Et voilà, et moi avec mon équipe, ils commencent à me parler, les volontaires de Zaka, et je vois qu'il se passe quelque chose sur leur visage. C'est pas quelque chose de normal. Moi, je suis là, je suis fort, je suis là pour les renforcer. Mais même moi, j'arrive pas à les renforcer. Quand je rentre dans une maison qui est toute noire, qui est toute brûlée, noire, et avec le phare, un phare, je regarde, et d'un coup, je vois un grand truc comme ça qui est entier. Ça veut dire, j'essaie de voir c'est quoi. C'était un père brûlé avec deux enfants qui attrapaient les pieds du père, chacun de notre côté, qui essayaient que le père le regarde. Il n'est pas arrivé à les garder, mais en plus de ça, ils étaient brûlés dans la maison. C'est des trucs atroces. C'est même des gens qui sont... il faut comprendre que même des gens... des gens humains, d'accord, mais ça c'est des trucs, même des bêtes sauvages, quand ils viennent manger leur manger, ça veut dire qu'ils sont sauvages, d'accord, c'est des bêtes sauvages, mais ils viennent pour manger et ils s'en vont, d'accord. Si le loup il a mangé, il a pas faim maintenant, il va pas continuer. Là, c'est pire que des bêtes sauvages. Ça veut dire c'est pire que des bêtes sauvages. Et c'est pas que ceux-là qui sont venus, c'est pas que les terroristes, parce qu'il y avait aussi des enfants qui sont venus. Mais ça, j'ai entendu. Ça, c'est déjà des choses que j'ai entendues, qui sont venus là-bas sur place, parce que tout était ouvert. C'est fini. Ils avaient le aller-retour. Alors, c'est pas que cela. Il faut savoir. Et ce qui est très important, je pense, c'est qu'il faut que tous les peuples le sachent, que si on les laisse maintenant, si ça va continuer comme ça, si les peuples ils renforcent pas Israël à ce moment-là, ça veut dire au lieu d'essayer de faire des choses qui sont contre ce que Israël pense pour terminer le Hamas, ça va continuer, mais ça va arriver en dehors d'Israël et ça va arriver aussi ici en France, ça peut arriver aussi en Amérique, de partout, si on laisse c'est comme quelqu'un qui a une maladie, une maladie, si on ne coupe pas la maladie, la grave maladie, le cancer, ça commence à sortir dans tout le corps, tu peux rien faire. Et il faut le couper, et quand tu le trouves le plus vite possible, tu le fais dans la médecine, alors là tu peux le faire vivre après, d'accord? Alors c'est très très important. Et alors voilà, c'est ce que je veux vous dire, je vous renforce et je veux vous dire merci beaucoup à tous ceux-là qui sont venus ici et qui sont là pour nous renforcer et pour écouter ce qui s'est passé. C'est des choses horribles, mais il faut le savoir. Et merci beaucoup.
Merci bien, Monsieur Habib. Thank you very much for your emotional testimony, Mr. Habib, and we again thank both Ichud Hatzalah and Zaka for the tremendous work that you do now and always. We will now hear from Matan Boltax, a survivor of one of the most horrific scenes on October 7th, the early morning attack on mostly young people on a weekend and another major Jewish religious holiday at the Supernova Desert Music Festival near Kibbutz Haim in southern Israel. That kibbutz, or collective agricultural community itself, had a population of under 450 people in 2021. Some 364 civilians were methodically massacred at the Nova Festival, with some 40 more taken hostage, several of whom we sadly came to know from our television screens across the world. Matan is originally from the United States, and his experience is of particular relevance to UNESCO colleagues here in Paris, with the organization's mandate as a guardian of world culture, including music. Matan, we're so sorry for what you've gone through, but we're very grateful that you've come here to share your experience with us. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Matan Boltax. I'm 23 years old. I grew up in New York and I moved to Israel when I was 10, and I've lived in Israel since then. On October 6th, it was the last day of Sukkot, a Jewish holiday in October, a very festive day where people go out and dance with their Torahs. I had a great meal with my family, everyone was dancing. And we had bought tickets to this festival a couple months in advance. I'd say it's just a festival where a bunch of people, 20 to 30, are really going to have fun and dance. I'd say it's a modern day Grateful Dead concert is a good equivalent. We arrived there the gates opened at 12, we arrived at 2. The festival was supposed to go on till 4 p.m. At 6:30 at sunrise, which is basically the whole peak of the whole event, we started seeing rockets flying over our head. Quickly, the music shut down. We knew that the music wasn't going to go back on and that the festival was obviously over. We were very bummed and scared, but as the sadly, as people live in Israel, we're very used to rockets flying over our head. I also served in the army for 3 years as a sniper and served 8 months on the Gaza border. So we were definitely scared of the rockets, but it's something that we have experienced before and that we were used to. A lot of the people who, once they saw the rockets flying over their head, left all their stuff behind and decided to go straight to their cars and drive home. Me and my friends and I, who had served in Gaza and also live in the southern part of Israel, who were more used to this, decided that we would be at the same amount of risk if we were lying in our next to all our gear, or if we were stuck in standstill traffic, as it would be 3,000 people leaving at the same time in a one-lane highway. So we laid there for about 20 minutes. Usually these rocket fire barrages last about 5 minutes, and then stuff, which is crazy, but stuff go back to normal. This was going on for about 20 to 30 minutes. At that point, we realized that this was something out of the normal, but we still felt kind of safe because you could see the rockets flying north towards Tel Aviv and the central of Israel instead of at us, which was also very weird to us. After about 20 to 30 minutes, this is now 7 a.m., we decided, the police came and told us, all right, you have to get out of here. This is getting serious, as the rocket barrage they kept on firing at us. But so we quickly packed up our stuff, which ended up really saving our lives. But we packed up our stuff, we headed to our car. We were still joking around as we couldn't find our car in the parking lot. We still had no idea, or really never even thought that a scenario like this could ever happen. Like, I served on the Gaza border, and every person or animal who would touch the fence, we would just spend all night right at that spot, making sure nothing happened. So just a scenario of thousands of civilians, terrorists, anyone crossing the border was just unimaginable to us. We got to our car at about 7. As a good Israeli does, we cut through traffic. We reached about 50 yards before the highway, and we just hit standstill traffic as everyone was leaving at the same time. We got out of our cars. We just started talking to everyone there as we were stuck. And after waiting there for 5 minutes, the police blocked off the entrance to the highway going north, which was everyone's route to go home, because to the south there's about 5 more miles till Egypt. So there's only a couple of kibbutzim, so that was no one's really route to get home. So we tried to go south and go around and take a different route home, but that was also standstill traffic. And about 5 minutes later, this is about 7:10, we saw several cars and people coming back towards the festival, several injured, several bleeding. And you started hearing gunshots. And you can, as someone who served in the army, you can easily tell the difference between Israeli weapons being fired and between AK-47s, which is what Hamas uses. So at that point, we started to kind of get a lot more worried. But we still, even three terrorists might have entered the country. There's hundreds of soldiers and tanks here on the border. We still weren't as worried as we should have been. About 5 minutes later, we started hearing lots and lots and lots more gunshots. The police decided to tell everyone to run away as far as they can east. People by this time had started just leaving their cars behind and running away by foot. I decided to stay in my car as I just felt like I could get away faster with my friend. No one really cared about their cars anymore. We just wanted to get home. We bumped into 2 cars just to make way, and we started fleeing east with our car. It really felt like just unimaginable. About 500 young people, were like barely dressed. It was still summer, and just shorts and tank tops, just running away for their lives as we're just rumbling across. We knew we had to head east, and at one point we were driving through 4x4 fields and through farmland. At one point the road took us south, And we knew that that was not the way we wanted to go. And about 100 meters later, like, we saw a kilometer in front of us, there was a big gate and it was locked, and a lot of people started to make U-turns, and behind that gate were several pickup trucks with terrorists. So we quickly made a U-turn. We somehow found, with the help of Google Maps, this 4x4 route that luckily didn't pop our tires to keep on going east. We made it, we drove about another 2 kilometers east and headed up north to the highway. Eventually we still had to get home. At this point, the rocket fire had really started to hit the southern part of Israel, and it was still nonstop, and we finally realized that there was something much crazier and something we'd never experienced before going on. We had several rockets fall a couple hundred meters from us on the highway. We quickly saw a shelter on the highway. We decided to stop in there. We stayed in there for about 2 minutes. We all felt, it was just us there, and these 2 people we picked up who were frozen and just couldn't move. We just shoved them into our car. We felt very claustrophobic in there, and just, it didn't feel right, so we quickly got back into our car, drove across the street. There was a small town called Tkuma. The gate was closed because it was Sabbath, and the whole town keeps the Sabbath, so we had to climb over the fence, which luckily we weren't, no one thought we were terrorists, so we climbed over the fence, knocked on the first door that we saw, and this kind family let us in, and we stayed in their shelter for 12 hours. It was very scary in the shelter because we were the closest house to the highway, and we saw several times pickup trucks and tanks rumbling after them, chasing after them and shooting at them. We got there at about 9 a.m. At 7 p.m. we all started to get emergency call up to reserves. And we just couldn't really stay in that shelter anymore as we felt super claustrophobic and really helpless. So we had some military presence escort us back to the highway, which was still very dangerous at the time. The scenes we saw while driving home were apocalyptic. Just so many accidents on the side of the road, bodies, tanks driving on highways, which they're never allowed to do as they wreck all the concrete in the highways. We made it home at 9 p.m. I remember the first hug I gave was to my mom, and as she didn't really know what was going on because she keeps the Shabbat, she keeps the Sabbath, and that was very emotional for me. I think I just want to share my story, as I don't think anyone should ever feel that helpless, even as we live in such a country with such a strong military. Like, it was just something that I've never experienced before, and I think what I want to give and show everyone is that just how relentless the Jewish people are, and just spread as much hope as I can, and that how everyone, Jews, non-Jews, anyone in the world can do their part by just praying, lighting candles, if it's saying Psalms, Tehillim, if it's any donation, positive social media post. I really hope we can be over with these times soon and all of our friends can come home. I have several friends who are kidnapped and several who are murdered. This is a picture of us at the festival. As you can see, everyone is fleeing behind us, and we decided to wait an extra 20 minutes, which eventually saved our lives. My friends and I are all on the right. We all made it home, which I'm insanely grateful, and we're all very lucky. Really, we were guided by Hashem and we obviously have a bigger part in this world to do. And the 4 people on the left, those 2 girls made it home, who just happened to join us and sit with us while everyone was fleeing. And the guy holding up his fingers is Hirsch. He is kidnapped now in Gaza and his hand was blown off, so we're also waiting for him to come home. And the guy next to him is Anil. He saved several people's lives in a shelter while throwing grenades out, and eventually he was shot. I just want to say thank you for having me and for listening to my testimony, and I hope we can all see lighter times very soon.
Thank Time, thank you so much for bearing witness to the unthinkable events that we saw in our time in 2023 in our world on October 7th. And we hope that this type of testimony, as you said, will help both prevent the denial and to spur the international community to ensure that such atrocities never happen. Genuinely privileged to have keynote remarks from Bernard-Henri Lévy. Mr. Lévy truly requires no introduction. A French philosopher, filmmaker, activist, and the author of over 45 books and 8 films. Born in 1948, he was one of the pioneers of the New Philosophers movement and has been one of the West's foremost intellectuals defending democracy and humanism against totalitarianism and fascism. Some examples of his work include his most recent book, The Will to See, Madness, and The Empire and the Five Kings. He followed the trail of the murdered Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl in Pakistan for his book, Who Killed? In 1992, Mr. Lévy convinced French President François Mitterrand to make his surprise journey to Sarajevo to stand in support of Bosnians. For 4 years, he pushed for intervention to stop ethnic cleansing and atrocities and made 2 films on the war in Bosnia. In the wake of the war against the Taliban in 2002, Mr. Lévy was appointed by French President Jacques Chirac as special envoy to Afghanistan. His findings resulted in the French book Reports to the French President and Prime Minister on France's participation in the reconstruction of Afghanistan. It was published for the first time in English in 2021 with a foreword by U.S. General David Petraeus. Mr. Lévy was instrumental in the intervention by Presidents Nicolas Sarkozy and Barack Obama to protect civilians in Libya against dictator Muammar Gaddafi, and he published a first-hand account of his role in this war. Since 2015, Mr. Lévy has been highly involved on the Kurdish side in the fight against Daesh ISIS. His documentary film, Peshmerga, premiered as official selection of the Cannes Film Festival and followed his months embedded with Kurdish forces traveling the 450-kilometer front line against the jihadists. In 2016, Mr. Lévy was embedded with Kurdish and Iraqi forces liberating Mosul. Out of this experience came another film, The Battle of Mosul, which is the only first-hand account of the fall of the capital of the so-called caliphate. His 2021 film, The Will to See, was released nationwide in the US and followed his travels during the pandemic in Nigeria, Iraqi and Syrian Kurdistan, Ukraine, Somalia, the Lesbos refugee camp in Greece, Bangladesh, Libya, and Afghanistan to chronicle human suffering. And since the invasion last year and the actual start of the long war in 2014, Mr. Lévy has traveled to Ukraine, addressing hundreds of thousands on the Maidan in 2014, representing the President of France at Babi Yar commemorations, meeting Volodymyr Zelensky before he became president, embedding with troops, and completing an hour-long television documentary called Why Ukraine? His new film, Slava Ukraina, was released nationwide in the US this year, and another, Glory to the Heroes, was just debuted at the United Nations in New York last week.
They mean that the crime would have been a reply to some to the will not to do peace by Israel. It's absurd. Hamas does not want peace, as we all know. And Hamas has one program, one will, which is to build a state from Jordan to river, which means annihilation of Israel. So the crime, the October 7, happened in a, not in a vacuum. It appeared in a full mess of words who were saying grossly, we want a state from Jordan to the sea, which meant disparition of Israel. This is a reality. which has to be reminded to Mr. Gutierrez, to a lot of chiefs of state in what is called, in the very despicable way, by the way, the Global South, and so on. Second remark, we hear all over the press, the television, the places where the general conversation is built and fed, we hear that the Hamas, this terrible organization who wants to exterminate Israel, was fed, financed, created by Israel. We hear that on and on. Honestly, I'm not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu, is the least I can say. One could find in my weekly column in Le Point various articles which I wrote since the 90s, where I said that Netanyahu is not only not my cup of tea, but I think he is a danger for Israel. But this idea that Israel built Hamas is just a propos de table. It's a gossip. It's an urban legend. The only thing which probably Israel did under many prime ministers was to try to deal with those who were elected in Gaza, to try to save peace, probably. There was, and I know a little, many of the prime ministers who hold the seat since 20 years. There has been always this idea that peace had to be saved as much as possible, even with people like Hamas, as long as they don't commit mass murders as the one they committed on October 7. This has to be very clearly said. And honestly, I don't know any clear evidence, any clear statement, except private conversation reported in off-the-record violations of any prime minister saying that Hamas had to be fed in order to divide the Palestinian power or to split the Palestinian authority. Another thing we hear a lot since this terrible crime is about the disproportion of Israeli reply. It's right to wonder about proportion, because a just war is just when the aim is just and when the method also is fairly balanced. It's a real question, which is raised by all the theoreticians of the just wars till recently, the American philosopher Michael Walzer. It's an important subject, important question. It can be discussed. My feeling, I was in Israel just after October 7. I'm following, as all of you, what is concretely happening on the ground. I am rather familiar of the methods of IDF, of Tzahal, and I do believe that Tzahal is behaving in a proportionate way. Warning before hitting, giving ultimatum of 1 day that becomes 2 days, that become 1 week, that became 2 weeks, in order to encourage the civilians to evacuate. Sometimes on the Saladin Road, which is open 6 hours a day, escort or try to escort those who take the road and who are prevented to take it by Hamas, all that means to have the concern of civilians, to try to have as little civilian casualties as possible, and all this means to have in head the will to do a well-proportionated war. Of course, there is huge numbers of casualties, and this is unbearable, unsufferable, that's sure. But we cannot say that Israel is acting in a disproportionate way. And by the way, I would be happy to know from those who accuse Israel of that, what would be the proportionate reply? What will be the alternative strategy? What will be the alternative tactics? And it's like for Ukraine. I was recently, the last days in Washington, and I heard a lot of people telling me, but Ukrainian army does not have the good strategy. Okay, what is? What do you propose? What is the alternative strategy of tactic? Generally, there is no reply, and it is the same for Israel. The fourth remark I would like to do is that there is one alternative strategy. Oh, yeah, there is one, to be honest, which is proposed by a part of the international community, which is ceasefire. Ceasefire, stop of fights. Stop of fights again. It's necessary when you have to convey some humanitarian aid. Stop of fight is necessary when you have to take out some hostage, which has been done, as you know, recently. But a ceasefire which only result would be to help the Hamas to regroup, to rearm, to reshape and to rebuild their systems of defense and of attacks. It is only a way to lengthen, to prolongate the war and the casualties and so on. A ceasefire was not asked to, you quoted, Mr. President, you quoted the film I shot, I directed about Mosul, the capital of the caliphate of ISIS. I was there with the Kurds, embedded with the Kurds, then embedded with the Iraqi army, the Golden Division, and I made a film out of that, which is available on the platform of TV French channel, German French, called Arte. I never heard, when I was there, from November 8, 2015, till January 10, 2016. I never heard a call for ceasefire. I never heard any responsible leader of the free world or of the world asking to save ISIS, to allow ISIS to regroup or to escape. Never. First time we hear that about a terrorist army is now when Israel is fighting against Hamas. And this has to be stressed and repeated on and on. About the hostage, a lot of observers, probably often with goodwill, I'm sure, often, say that there is a contradiction between the two requirements, the two obligations, the two tasks of Israel. Number one, to destroy Hamas, and number two, to liberate the hostage. That there is a double bind, that there is the jaw of a horrible dialectic, etc. Again, it's true that Israel is probably facing the most complex operation of liberation of hostage in the whole history. Israel has an experience of liberation of hostage, Entebbe and others, certainly never as complex as this one. But if you are honest, if you try to look genuinely at the situation, it is difficult and it is contradictory, but not as much as they say. The only way which Israel had, and America and Thailand and France, to have some hostage liberated, the only reason why Hamas decided at a point to negotiate was because they were pushed by a strong force, they were under attack, and they were in front of an army who decided to be merciless against them, Hamas. So force has been, alas, I hate to say that, but force has been the only reason which made some, not all, some of the hostage being liberated. About ceasefire again, and about Mosul and the fact that it's the first time we ask ceasefire, some say, okay, but you cannot compare. You cannot compare Hamas with ISIS, and even less, you cannot compare Hamas with Hitler, which is absolutely right. Nothing is comparable with Hitler, and it will be an offense to the victims of Holocaust to compare anyone to Hitler. But to say that Hamas is a weak organization, small organization, in a little strip of earth, Gaza Strip, which is, by the way, very small, but let's have the proportion, 10 times bigger than the city of Dubai. The Gaza Strip, you probably know, Gaza Strip, his total size, 360 square kilometers, is 10 times the dimensions of Dubai city. It's more small than the whole Dubai Emirate, but it is the size, it is 10 times bigger than Dubai. So Hamas is not a little organization in a little confetti of territory. And for one reason, and of this we have to be aware. Israel is aware, civil society is aware, Tzahal is aware, and we have to be aware for one reason, which is that Hamas is not alone. Hamas has some allies, not only Houthis and not only Hezbollah. Hamas belongs in the new game of the new world in which we entered 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, belongs to a club, belongs to an international of sponsors or allies. Iran, for sure, Russia, for sure also. Moscow is the only place where the Hamas leadership were received with red carpet before the pogrom of October 7 and after. So we are facing not an isolated kamikaze group, despaired and so on. We are objectively in front of one piece of a chain which partly molds and shapes the order or disorder of the world today. And this, again, is not sweet to hear that, of course. I would much prefer Hamas to be nothing, but it's not the case. They are part of a huge movement of authoritarian states, of dictatorships, of illiberal organizations, and so on. And we have to take that into consideration. When I was a younger philosopher, I was, as I still am, a militant of human rights. But I remember a text of one of my elders, a great French philosopher called Claude Lefort. Great French philosopher, very respected and respectable, Claude Lefort. And he wrote 30 years ago an important text called Human Rights Are Not a Politic, which meant that if you want to act in a just way, if you want to act fairly in the world, you have to take into consideration two things. Again, difficult. Human rights. Every life is sacred. That's absolutely evident. But also these old things which the ancient Greeks invented, which is geopolitics. If you are only considering geopolitics, you are a sort of Kissinger. If you are only considering human rights, you might miss the main point and create, generate, be responsible for many more, and in a much larger scale, human rights violation. Last point, or not exactly the last. Does it mean that international community, UN, Security Council should not act, should not involve, should not pressure the actors of this war? No. International community exists, even when it dishonors itself, as it is often the case with Israel. UN exists, and I am among those who hope for UN sometimes to be useful. But what sort of pressure, what sort of action should the international community take? What sort of initiative? The only thing I hear is that they should twist the arm of the war cabinet in Israel, or propose another tactic or strategy which they don't have. I would dream of an international community, of an ad hoc group of states, of the Security Council, recommending, urging, pressing the Hamas for surrender, for example. Why don't we hear that? Never. An appeal, a call, a pressure on whoever, the sponsors and so on, for the surrender of the high commands of Hamas. I don't hear that. We have some surrenders. We saw recently very awful images, by the way, of surrendering low-grade soldiers. But a call, solemn, by international community, saying that the leadership of Hamas has committed the hugest, the most huge crime against Jews since the Second World War, and is oppressing the Palestinians, that they lost any authority, that they have to, their place is in front of the justice. I don't hear that. And more precise, we have some countries who pretend to be players in this war, who pretend to be honest brokers in, for example, the exchange between hostage and detainees in Israel, Qatar, or Istanbul. They are members of an organization which is not perfect, which is called Interpol, you know, or Interpol. Why don't we hear? This would be a good pressure of international community. Why don't we hear UN urging Qatar, urging Istanbul to arrest Mr. Agnier, Mr. Meshal, Mr. X or Y, who is in Istanbul? Why don't we see the Security Council recommending some Interpol mandates of arrest against these guys? This is possible tomorrow. America, France have relationship with Qatar. We speak with them. The most important American base in the area is not in Israel, is not in Egypt, it is in Qatar. So we have ways of, international community has waves of intervention on Qatar. Very simple thing. Arrest Ismail Haniyeh. Arrest Khaled Meshal. They committed huge crimes. They should go on international court. This would be a good way for international community to do pressure. Last but not least, I hear on and on the television stages, in the news also, the idea that, okay, Israel might do a necessary war, we can understand that, Israel has the right to self-defense, but they have no plan for the day after. They have no plan for the day after. What is? They should, before entering in war, before eliminating the Hamas, they should say what is their plan. I don't think so. I don't think so because, first of all, and I am, to be completely, for those maybe who are not familiar with the French intellectual stage, I am among those in France who have constantly been partisans all my life, since 50 years, of the recognition of the rights of the Palestinians. I was one of the godfathers with my friend Bernard Kouchner of a plan which was called the Geneva Plan, and so I supported everything, the Plan Rogers, the Saudi Plan, the Geneva Plan, the Ehud Olmert Plan. I know all of them, the parameters of Clinton. I'm in favor of everything, except that, A, there is a time for politics and a time for elimination of the worst criminals whom we saw since long. And number two, okay, to negotiate with terrorists when it is in order to save a baby or a family. But to speak now of the day after, to design now the shape of the future Palestinian state. What does it mean? If not a huge credit, a huge bonus to Hamas. What would it be for the entire world if not the following message? You see, when you commit crimes, terrorism, more than terrorism, crimes against humanity, it pays. The solution of the two-state, which was buried, on my point of view, wrongly, they revived it. So today, it is the worst moment to speak of the two-state solution. The time will come, of course, one day, when Hamas will be destroyed, when we will not see any longer 68% of the population of Cisjordania in favor of Hamas, the time will come, but not now. By the way, another argument which we hear very often is that it makes no sense to pretend to destroy Hamas, because if you cut a head, you have 10 others. We hear always this sort of wording, which is again a proof of despise incredible for the Palestinian. I believe the opposite. I believe that when you inflict to a terrorist organization, to a fascist state or proto-state, a real defeat, it does not encourage future vocations. It decreases, it calms, and the future vocation in an incredible way. When Hitler was defeated, of course, there was some remnants of Nazism here or there, but we had a new Germany, when a democratic one. When Al-Qaeda was defeated in Afghanistan, for some years, this is another debate, the decision to leave Kabul, but for a long time, we had, after the defeat of the Taliban, the remnants of Taliban went underground, and the women went in the street proudly, and so on. So I don't believe at all that a defeat of, a military defeat of Hamas would regenerate it. On the contrary. So this is for me the situation. And last word, of course, when I see myself, and I'm sure you too, and I'm sure all those who are here, when we see the images of this war, images of the 105 or 8 Israeli soldiers who have lost their life during the war, when we see the images of the thousands, we don't know the figures, of Palestinians of Gaza dead. We don't know the figures because I don't trust the figures of the minister of Hamas. But anyway, a lot. Of course, it is heartbreaking. Me, it breaks my heart. You probably, it breaks your heart. But the last thing I wanted to say is that those who pretend to have their heart broken, those who pretend that it is unbearable, that they cannot stand it, and that they have to go in the streets to protest by thousands, tens of thousands, in London, hundreds of thousands, those, I suspect them to be less sincere as we are here, for one reason. For one reason. The 100,000 who were in London, the tens of thousands who would be in the streets of Paris if the demonstration were allowed all the time, strangely enough, I never saw them. I never saw them when Syrian civilians were killed by hundreds of thousands. I did not see them even opening an eye when Boko Haram in Nigeria, a country which I know, I reported there for Paris Match, which you quoted, when Boko Haram committed horrible crimes. They did not care. They did not give any attention to that, to Boko Haram, to Syria, to Darfur, not to speak for the eldest among them of the Muslims of Bosnia. I remember when, with a few friends, we organized demonstrations in Paris for the Muslims of Bosnia. We were a few dozens. They did not care. So, why? Maybe because they were less informed and there was less images, then please, they should admit that they are victims of propaganda and that they should think twice before becoming blind. But the most plausible explanation is that they don't really care about the peace in Palestine and between Israel and Palestine. They don't really care about the human lost lives of Arabs in Syria or elsewhere, and that they care only when Jews are in the game. They care only when Jews can be condemned, and this has a name. I'm sorry, but the name of that is pure and mere anti-Semitism. These were the remarks I wanted to propose you for the end of this important meeting.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. Bernard-Henri Lévy, I'm sure I speak for all of us in thanking you so much for those powerful words of reflection, of grappling, of honesty and of conscience, including your underscoring of not just so many spurned past peace proposals to address legitimate Palestinian aspirations and legitimate aspirations for coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, but also practically your call for belated and thus far completely neglected focus on accountability for the extremists responsible for the atrocities of October 7th, and those responsible ultimately for both Israeli and Palestinian suffering. In order to truly, to credibly and effectively and lastingly overcome the challenges facing the Middle East, but also humanity as a whole, you here in Europe, here in France, know it better than many others. This sort of honesty and of moral clarity really is indispensable. Thank you, Mr. Lévy, for being with us just one day after your return from a very busy trip to the United States. As we now move to conclude, we were honored to have some closing words from our host, Dr. Joël Mergui, President of the Consistoire de Paris. Mr. Mergui, please.
Monsieur l'ambassadeur, monsieur le président du Bnei-Brit, messieurs les responsables du Bnei-Brit, chers ambassadeurs et diplomates de l'UNESCO, chère Ingrid Betancourt, qui nous fait le plaisir de venir soutenir notre cause, chers amis, simplement quelques mots pour vous dire la responsabilité de vous accueillir au Centre européen du judaïsme. Alors c'est aujourd'hui un peu une annexe de l'UNESCO. On a le plaisir d'accueillir un certain nombre de personnalités qui sont là. La douleur d'entendre des témoignages poignants, les témoignages et à la fois des personnes qui ont vécu l'horreur et à la fois des personnes qui ont parmi leurs familles qui sont aujourd'hui dans l'obscurité la plus totale et dans laquelle nous attendons des nouvelles. Les personnes qui aussi sur le terrain, comme Zaka et Atzala, qui ont vu aussi ces horreurs. Je voulais simplement, dans ces quelques mots, vous dire qu'en tant que responsable de la communauté juive à Paris et maintenant un des responsables de la communauté juive d'Europe, dire qu'on a entendu depuis la Shoah, plus jamais ça. Et je l'ai dit au lendemain de ces drames. Et le plus jamais ça, malheureusement, on l'a revécu. On a revécu des témoignages, on les entend, qui ressemblent à tous les témoignages que nous avons entendus des rescapés de la Shoah. Et oui, effectivement, une partie du monde, une partie de vos pays se sont mobilisés et se sont exprimés et ont condamné le Hamas. Est-ce suffisant? Pour l'instant, le Hamas est toujours là. l'idéologie islamiste radicale est toujours là, un petit peu partout dans le monde, et elle est en train de se développer. Et moi, en tant que juif, en tant que responsable d'une communauté juive, dans laquelle ce soir encore, aujourd'hui ou hier, un homme est rentré dans une crèche pour vouloir faire du mal à des enfants, pendant que tous les jours il y a des actes antisémites qui remontent dans le monde, je me pose la question si on a fait suffisamment et si le monde a fait suffisamment. Si on savait que Hitler était en gestation, est-ce qu'on aurait attendu plusieurs années pour que le monde entier le combatte? Alors on est aussi dans une gestation d'un mal dans lequel je considère que la mobilisation est encore insuffisante. Je finirai en vous disant que j'étais sur les lieux des drames et j'ai compris tout ce qui s'était passé. J'ai vu Pharos, j'ai vu tout ce qui s'est passé et j'ai quand même osé voir le film que l'ambassade d'Israël nous a montré. Et je me posais la question si j'allais le voir ou non. Parce que je suis médecin, tout ce qu'on m'avait raconté, je pouvais l'imaginer, est-ce que j'avais besoin de revoir ce drame? Mais je ne regrette pas de l'avoir vu pour une simple raison. Parce que j'ai vu quelque chose dont j'avais entendu parler, mais que je n'avais pas vu tant que je ne l'avais pas vu de mes yeux. Je n'avais pas vu de mes yeux l'hilarité et la joie des terroristes pendant qu'ils assassinaient, pendant qu'ils décapitaient, pendant qu'ils tuaient. Cette joie et cette hilarité, elle est inscrite dans ma tête. Ces rires de ces hommes dont je voyais les visages qui se filmaient eux-mêmes, elle est inscrite dans ma tête. Et en même temps, je n'ai jamais entendu autant en 3/4 d'heure de Allah Akbar. Je n'ai jamais entendu autant ce cri de Allah Akbar en même temps que cette hilarité. Alors nous, Juifs, dans le monde, nous n'avons pas fait l'amalgame. En France, il n'a fallu protéger aucune mosquée. Aucun Juif n'aurait imaginé de se dire « on a entendu Allah Akbar, donc on va aller se venger sur des musulmans ». Il n'y a pas eu cette réaction. Mais est-ce que le monde musulman a, lui, évité qu'on fasse l'amalgame? Est-ce qu'il a suffisamment condamné le Hamas pour dire ce Allah Akbar, c'est pas le nôtre? Ben, je considère que le silence du monde musulman, en général, majoritairement des États musulmans, sur le Allah Akbar et sur la condamnation claire du Hamas n'est pas suffisante, mais nous n'avons pas fait l'amalgame. Et je voudrais finir en disant que dans la tradition juive, on dit « bin pol oivecha al tismach ». C'est ce qu'on apprend de génération en génération depuis tout enfant. Quand ton ennemi tombe, ne sois pas heureux. Quand ton ennemi tombe, ne sois pas heureux. La fête de Pessah, qui arrivera, qui est la libération du peuple juif, on n'a pas le droit d'être complètement heureux comme dans toutes les autres fêtes juives, parce que pour que le peuple juif ait pu être libéré, il a fallu que le peuple égyptien soit enseveli dans la mer Rouge. Il faut le repenser aujourd'hui. On est nourri à l'absence de haine, pendant que d'autres sont nourris à la haine. Et devant ces idéologies qui se confrontent, on a besoin de l'opinion internationale, de la mobilisation internationale, avant que le plus jamais ça ne devienne encore pire qu'il n'est aujourd'hui. Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you so much again to you, Dr. Melki, to your team, the Consistoire, and the European Jewish Center for the very generous and gracious hospitality, especially in light of such difficult conditions and the Hanukkah holiday this week. No less, we thank the Permanent Delegation of Israel to the Multilateral Organizations in France, particularly His Excellency Ambassador Haim Assaraf and Deputy Chief of Mission David Michaels, for their vital partnership on this program and for the support of the staff at the Embassy of Israel in Paris, including Director of Public Diplomacy Fares Saeb. This program could not have been possible without the tireless work and commitment of our B'nai B'rith International colleagues, particularly B'nai B'rith World Center Jerusalem Director Alan Schneider, our UNESCO representatives Stefan Tichot and Albert Lipkovich, and our B'nai B'rith France and B'nai B'rith Europe leadership. Finally, we again thank every one of our invaluable presenters today, and we thank the distinguished members of our global audience online and also here in person for joining at this challenging moment. Thank you all very much. We wish you happy and healthy holidays. Merci bien et bonne soirée. Merci.
thank you, David, for all the good work and for making it happen. Thank you.
Merci. Bernard, viens, on va prendre une photo ensemble. Venez, on va prendre une photo. Tu veux venir saluer les jeunes il y a 550 jeunes.
Bernard, thank you. It was very interesting and very thoughtful and always a pleasure.
Merci pour tes...
J'ai pas le temps, tu m'aurais dit. Thank you. Voilà, on va ça. C'est que ça n'a pas de sens. Thank you so much. תודה לך. הייתי...
Vous êtes chez vous.
אני מעריך את זה מאוד.
אתה רוצה אותי, יש קולקטיב סט,